So we're back with more balls, and my balls are even crazier than before. So if you guys saw our original ball lightning build here for season 2, we have actually changed quite a bit. There's more than just the Tal ring that we've added to the build. I've changed the Paragon board. I've changed quite a bit in terms of our Vampiric Powers. There's a lot that's actually been tweaked around. I wanted to see what I could get away with in terms of just keep on adding damage. And it is insane what we can get away with. And ball doesn't need to do this much damage in the first place. But I thought might as well have some fun with it. And we just kind of full sent it. And it's really gross. I actually just got an amulet 2 minutes ago before starting to record this video. And it has helped out our damage significantly. It was almost a god roll in terms of what I'm looking for. We'll talk about that later. But in all of the clips that you guys are seeing in this video, I did not have that amulet on. So what you're seeing could be even a little bit better, and not to mention, I still don't have a Shaco. I'm still running the Godslayer's helmet, but once I get to the Shaco, or if you guys are lucky enough to get it, you're going to be doing even better with this build. So there's still a lot of improvement to be had, and it's just disgusting how much damage this build can put out. With this new amulet that I got, I'm seeing ticks over 1 million, and I've seen like a couple lucky overpowers hit like 1.6, a little bit over that, which is crazy considering how fast this build attacks and puts out damage numbers. Having just 1 million plus out of those is disgusting. Anything in the game, 4-player scaling, does not matter. You will be able to melt it. I will have a couple options for you guys that I'll mention later if you want to make the build a little bit more forgiving instead of like always worrying about your rotations and things like that. If you just want to right click and go, I will have options for you guys as well. But right now I wanted to see what I could get away with in terms of resources and all that kind of stuff. So it is a little bit more thought-provoking to play this current setup, but we'll go through the other options later on in the video. I hope to be streaming live on Twitch when this video goes live, so if you guys want to come hang out and mess around with other Sorc builds with me, I'll be over there, so hopefully I'll see you there. Otherwise, if you do enjoy my balls, make sure you guys are subscribed to the channel for more Diablo builds here coming shortly. But with all that out of the way, let's go ahead and jump fully into this build. As always, I like to start off with our skills first. I'm not going to be talking about a lot of these too much, so Flame Shield, always a given. This can make us immune. A little bit of movement speed, and also the mana cost reduction is huge out of there when we're bossing. Also, a big part of this now is this is how we're going to be making enemies burn, since we are going to be grabbing Devouring Blaze later on in the skill tree, just for a little bit more burst damage on bosses. So this is definitely a big pickup. Teleports, obviously move around, DR, all that good stuff. Frost Nova, vulnerable, CCing the enemies, good stuff. Unstable Currents is going to be our ultimate. And then instead of Lightning Spear, I have Ice Blades on for the Tal. If you want a little bit more survivability in dungeons, go ahead and just throw Lightning Spear back on. You don't need that 4th stack of Tal from the Ice Blades, so go ahead and throw Lightning Spear on if you just want like a little bit more utility and survivability. Ice Blades are purely here just for that extra stack at the moment. And then Ball Lightning obviously is going to be our main skill and how we're going to be damaging everything. And then our enchantments, we're still going to be running Lightning Spear all the time. Now, what I wanted to get away with is getting rid of Chain Lightning as one of our enchantments. So now, with this setup, we can run both Lightning Spear and Ball Lightning at all times. Whether we're dungeoning, doing Uber bosses, does not matter. These won't change. And you guys can just run through everything. It's crazy what these two combined can do. You can end up killing a lot of things before you even enter the room. Say you get lucky on a Lightning Spear that's traveling around and it spawns a Ball Lightning on Elite. It's probably going to die before you even get there, which is really cool and very helpful. So having these two enchantments at one time is just so overpowered. It's crazy. But with all these skills and the enchantments out, let's go ahead and talk about the skill tree itself. Now, we don't really need anything out of the basic. We're not using it, so just put 2 points wherever you want. I just do Firebolt just in case I need to test something. And then as we move down, we're still going to be putting points into Chain Lightning for our ultimate, just so we can make more crackling energies while that's active. So a lot better bossing. Also, this will play a role with one of our aspects for dungeoning. So it's still good to put the points into Destructive Chain Lightning. And then we do just need 1 more point. So you can put it into like the mana, but I just do Potent Warding for a little bit more defensive capabilities. And then Flame Shield, we're going to be grabbing Mystical Flame Shield for that mana cost reduction so we can spam more balls. Also, Shimmering Teleport, so we get that DR. 3 points into Glass Cannon, and then Mystical Frost Nova for the vulnerable here. And then I do 1 point into Elemental Attunement just so I can get a few more resets on the cooldowns for my defensive skills. It's actually really helpful, and part of a easy Duriel kill actually involves resetting Flame Shield with this. So I do really like just to have 1 point in here. We're attacking so much, you don't need more than 1 point. You'll get this to proc pretty much all the time it's ready to go. As we move down into the Conjuration, we're going to be grabbing Lightning Spear and Invoked Lightning Spear so it can stun. This is our main way of surviving in later dungeons just because enemies are not going to be able to attack us. They're always going to be stunned, and you're mowing through them so quickly, they're really not going to be able to do anything. Now, I do have 1 point here into Ice Blades. If you guys have the Shaco, you're not really going to need this because you don't need to invest in it. You just need to be able to equip it on your hotbar. Or if you guys plan on just using Lightning Spear, you don't need this point here. And you can put this wherever else you want. You could put it down here into Static Discharge if you want to cap that out. Really, wherever you want to put this point, go for it. But I just have it here so I can use it. And then 3 points on the Conjuration Mastery. With an aspect that we're going to be using now in this build for bossing, I've seen between 20 and 25 stacks of Conjuration Mastery very consistently. So if you guys get 3 points of this on your amulet, it's going to help out your damage so much. It's very bursty, but that's really all you need because these bosses are going to die in like 2 seconds max. It's crazy how much damage this skill can help you put out. Otherwise, all the defensive skills here align the elements, Mana Shield, and Protection. We're going to be maxing all 3 of those out. And then, like I said, we are going to be grabbing Devouring Blaze now. So this is just for a little bit extra burst damage with bosses, or if you guys pop your Flame Shield on a group of elites, they're all going to be burning, and you're going to be able to get to that bonus crit damage, which is very helpful. Obviously, maxing out Ball Lightning and grabbing Wizard's Ball Lightning so we can create those crackling energies and sustain our mana. And then otherwise, I have Static Discharge here. I just have 2 points in here right now, like I said. If you can move that Ice Blades in here, cap that out. It's more crackling energies for you. And then otherwise, max out Invigorating Conduit so you can maintain your mana and constantly spam Ball Lightnings at all times. And then Unstable Currents, I do just go to Prime. You really don't need the crackling energies to stay. Really not going to help you out. You can move that point into a more beneficial location. 1 point at Coursing Currents so we can get down to Electrocution and make enemies deal less damage to us. And then finally, you're going to do Veer's Mastery. Now, I know that Esu's Ferocity is bugged right now, and it's going to be proccing off any damage. Like, you can just do lightning damage, and you're going to get this bonus. But I do like Veer's Mastery a lot better, because it's DR and damage all in one. Taking a look at our gear, starting at our helmet. If you guys don't have the Shaco, Godslayer's Crown is really good. Or if you want a little bit more survivability, just run a normal helmet with the Mage Lord's aspect that boosts your Veer's Mastery passive. Either of those will work very well, but Godslayer's Crown is usually my favorite for the grouping and extra damage. And then on the chest piece, I just go full defensive on here now. So total armor is a big one. You're really going to want that. And then otherwise DRs, or if you want to throw a max health on there, any of those are going to be very helpful. Just make this thing pure defensive. Since we're using so many uniques now, you guys are really going to need to make up that defensive capability. And then otherwise on here is where I throw my Disobedience aspect. That armor is incredibly important, so make sure you get this up to like 6.5k plus. Then you get your Disobedience. Usually be good to go into the tier 100s. Then on my gloves here, I like to run attack speed, crit chance, lightning crit damage is good, and then you can do like lucky at chance to restore resource, or anything like that. That last one you can kind of swap around whatever you see fit. Otherwise, on here is where I roll the Edge Master's aspect, so we can deal increased damage based on our primary resource. When you guys are bossing or running around, you're very often going to be at full mana because you're picking up all of those crackling energies that are on the ground, so you can get this bonus uptime very high. Now, in the last version, I had actually never gotten Tibault's Will yet, and this thing is really, really good. It's going to be one of our main ways of sustaining our mana as well with this build, since we are not really using Chain Lightning anymore, so this is going to be very helpful. We are going to be using 2 unstoppable skills with Flame Shield and Teleport, so we can get that 50 resource, and also, obviously, the 40% damage is huge. Then on my boots, I stick to Esu's Heirloom basically at all times. I think the crit chance is way too important. Also, that movement speed is so nice. You can use Flicker Steps, but for literally everything, I keep Esu's Heirloom on. I don't really see a reason to swap off for Flicker Step. You don't need your ult constantly in these dungeons. Completely unnecessary. And then on my weapon, you can use a wand or a dagger. Either one is really not going to make a huge difference with their implicits. Otherwise, I like to run all stats, intelligence, and then like vulnerable damage, and then you could do like mastery damage. I have damage to burning, so this thing is far from perfect, but anything like that will be good to go. Just find affixes with high uptimes. And this is where I throw our conceited aspect with the damage while we have a barrier. And then for your focus, I like to run crit chance on here, is one that I'm almost always going to have. Same thing with mana cost reduction. I would really like to have cooldown on here. Resource generation would be a good one too. Otherwise, lucky hit to restore primary resource isn't bad as well. And then otherwise just focus on a really high item power item here. So mine is 911, so this thing can get a lot better. And this is where I run the Storm Swell, so the 30% damage to vulnerable enemies while you have a barrier. This has incredibly high uptime, so this is a fantastic aspect to be running. I'm going to talk about this legendary ring last, so let's go over the Taller Shahs. Obviously, this thing is basically now best in slot. That's crazy amounts of damage. We can get 4 stacks of this when we look at our Vampiric Powers. If we use Ice Blades, Flame Shield is going to give us a stack, so this is very easy to get to 4, and that's going to be 15% per stack, which is nuts. Also, the affixes on here are crazy. Non-physical damage is going to help out our Frigid Fates Paragon. Also, the resource gen and cooldown is super gross for this setup, so always be running Tal Rashaz. On my amulet, so this is the new one that I got. My ideal amulet would be Conjuration Mastery, Mastery Skills, and then Defensive, and then Mana Cost Reduction. But if you guys wanted to go super crazy, you could go Conjuration Mastery, Mastery, Defensive, and Cooldown. Anything like that will be good to go. You can also replace Conjuration Mastery for Devouring Blaze, but I do like Conjuration Mastery a little bit more just because it is going to be a bigger damage jump. But finally, for the aspect on here, I like to run the Ball Lightning Orbits You just because it's super consistent. That's always going to be active. Also, I don't want to get disconnected here, but that's where I run this. It's not the highest thing, like the Storm Swell would be the highest technically. So if you want to put that up here, you can, but this one is just literally always active because it's our main source of damage. So that's why I run it up here. Feel free to swap that around. Now this ring is what I end up playing around with a lot, at least the aspect on here. So for the affixes, really quick, just that will always be there. Try to find like 2 rings if you can. But this is where I run crit chance is basically a must, and then otherwise like vulnerable damage, lightning damage, max mana, resource gen are all really good options on here. Also max health you could throw on here if you want to be a little bit more tanky. But then for the aspects, there's 2 that I've been swapping around quite a bit. And that is the Unstable Currents has a chance to cast an additional shock skill while it's active, which is super nice. So this is why I was getting like between 20 and 25 lightning spears. Also, you're going to be getting more ball lightnings, chain lightnings. So I actually find this to be incredibly helpful for bossing. And then for dungeons, I like to swap it with a ring that has, while Unstable Currents is not active, your shock skills have a chance to cast a free cast. So this is going to help us spawn more chain lightnings for more crackling energies as we go through and maintain our mana a little bit better. Because like I said, we're not running chain lightning enchant, and we're also not running the recharging aspect over here where every time it bounces we gain mana. That was like our main way of maintaining max mana before, and obviously we need to compensate for that somehow. So I've actually really been enjoying this. If you guys just want to hold right click, you never want to have to worry about your rotations, mana, or anything, just throw the chain lightning aspect back on. The enchantment back on, and then throw the recharging aspect on here. You'll never have to worry about it. Just drop the ball lightning enchantment for the dungeons and you'll be good to go. And then you can just have this ring as an option for your bosses, because your mana will always be full as you're doing your little circle around the bosses to maintain the balls on the enemies and also picking up the crackling energies that are around them. Yeah, this ring was definitely the big kind of experimental thing for this setup, and I've really been happy with these 2 aspects. And like I said, you guys can run the chain lightning stuff if you just literally never want to think about your mana, always want to just be spamming right click and never have to worry about your rotation. Just drop the ball lightning enchantment for chain lightning, throw on the recharging aspect over here, and you'll be good to go. Now the Vampiric Powers for this updated ball setup have changed quite a bit as well. Now there's 2 that are always going to be on, and that is Prey on the Weak and Ravenous. These 2 you'll literally never take off, always have these on. These other 3 you can kind of experiment with. I know a lot of people like Metamorphosis. I'm not really a huge fan. Also, I have it at level 3. If you guys have it at level 1, it might be a little bit more beneficial to you, especially with Tibault. So you could maybe replace a Cursed Touch with the Metamorphosis, but I really do like a Cursed Touch for just making everything vulnerable since we don't have a very consistent way anymore. We'll see why once we get to the Paragon board, but I do really like a Cursed Touch here. Also, the Stored Souls do pretty decent, and you're going to have a lot of them just because everything's going to be vulnerable and you're going to be able to store them up. Now, these two you can also swap around a lot. So if you want that extra stack of Tibault, put on Infection. That poison damage is going to give us an extra stack. So I always have this on for bossing. You can swap this out for something like Undying during dungeons if you just want a little bit more survivability, or Domination is really good in the dungeons as well. You could throw both of these on, get rid of Anticipation. I like to have this just because it's going to lower our cooldown of Unstable Currents by like 10 seconds almost. So it ends up being very useful over the course of a dungeon, but feel free to swap these out for anything that you see fit with this setup and these packed allocations. So I have 8 of the red of the Ferocities, 7 of the Divinities, and 3 of the Eternities. I can swap basically anything, whatever I want, and they'll always be active. So I really do like this setup, and it gives me a ton of flexibility with whatever I'm feeling and whatever content that I'm doing. The Paragon board actually received quite a bit of changes as well. We are going to be using essentially the same board layout that we were doing before. Like I have everything in the same, where I go into Enchant Master, then Ceaseless Conduit, and then also Static Surge. But one thing you'll see up here is we're no longer spec'd into Static Surge. I have this rotated just so we can get to the glyph a little bit quicker. And essentially what this is going to allow us to do, since we're not using Chain Lightning anymore, is get an extra glyph. So we now have 7 glyphs in this setup, and it is incredibly powerful. We can now fit Exploit up here, which is really nice, an extra 10%, and actually more to Vulnerable, which is really, really good. And then we can still fit on Charged. We can fit on the Enchanter. We can fit on Territorial, Destruction, Elementalist, and then Adept down here in the starting board. So I really do like this order just because we can get the non-physical damage, and we still have Frigid Fate, which once again, Tibault with that non-physical damage is going to allow us to actually cap this out at 30. We were like a couple percent short before. Now we're going to be able to get that up to that 30%. And like I said, everything's going to be vulnerable, so you're almost always going to have this 30% active at all times, which is super, super helpful. I think this is one of the best Sorcerer Paragon nodes in the game right now. It is incredibly strong. But yeah, that's basically the order that I've been doing. There's really not much else to it. If you guys try to get a little bit more like all stats on your gear, you can hit more of these breakpoints. But for the most part, I do just try to get the non-physical damage, lightning damage up here. That's why I do these 2 boards first. Also the damage to elites. We don't need these 2 movement speed nodes right here, just because we're gonna be hitting cap anyways with our Esu's Heirloom, so we can save a few points there and stretch it out super thin and grab that exploit glyph here. If you guys want to take a look at the whole thing and follow it along exactly, it'll be in the build planner, so go ahead and check that out. Yeah, that's our updated Ball Lightning Sorcerer. I truly do think this is one of the best builds in the entire game for literally anything you want to do. High tier nightmares, Helltide farming, Uber bosses, world bosses. It literally does not matter. This thing is going to fly through all of it. So it is super, super strong. I think it's right up there with like the crazy barb setups that are going around. I think they all have their strengths and weaknesses, and this is seriously just one of the best things in the entire game. And like I said, it's far from perfect. I'm missing a Shaco. If you guys have crazy good luck, you'll be even better off than I will, because you'll have the extra ranks on your cooldowns. It's going to be so gross. Obviously, the extra ranks of Ball too, since we don't have +4, since we're using Tibaults, and you guys are going to be flying once you get that luck. And I really hope to get that one day, and if I do, I'll end up showing it off in like a little mini update so you guys can see exactly what this is looking like. So if that sounds interesting, or if you just enjoyed my balls, make sure you are subscribed to the channel for more Diablo builds. But thank you all so much for watching this far in the video. I really do appreciate it. But anyways, I hope you all have a fantastic day, and I'll catch you all in the next video. See ya.